Hello and welcome back to another episode of the OS Academy. We're going to be continuing our time-lapse mapping series here, and as you guys might know, we're already at the normal, so we're almost done with our entire set. So let's go ahead and start working through how you go about making a normal. This is about 45 minutes to 43 minutes of time-lapsed footage, sped down to about 11 minutes. Like before, you'll see me start with my base, and I'm always going to start with a base. It just makes it easier for me, and of course we've talked about other ways of creating a map. You can do it piece by piece if you'd like. Sometimes that will help you. Now, the reason why I make it base by base is I can add the notes for what mode I want it to be. Like we explained, in Insane I try to map every possible beat to the music. In Hard we try to miss some of those lesser beats and try to focus on the main line. In Normal, we're definitely going to try to focus on the main line and the most simplistic rhythms. You'll also notice that if you look at the timeline as it's whizzing by here, you'll see that a lot of the beat patterns I do are kind of repetitive. Now, being repetitive and Insane might net you some bad points, but when you're working on normals and easies, a player new to this game, they're going to want something that's a little bit repetitive, something that they can get a hold of and understand the concept of what's going on with the game. So I'm going to continue to add new combos here, and we're just about done there, setting that final spinner. Now I'll slow it down and I'll start actually editing my objects. And like I said before, when starting with newer difficulties, sliders are your friends. They are much easier to hit than circles when done in a normal style, because I know somebody will probably say something about slider jumps, and yes, those can be very hard to hit if you're not ready for them. But with this normal, we're going to be using really simplistic. I think I lowered the slider speed to about 1.4 on the velocity meter, which means it's moving pretty slow for this song. BPM will also kind of adjust how fast that slider moves on top of the velocity there. And I give that a quick repeat. And we're going to go ahead and start working on the other combos. If you notice, I do use a lot of symmetry, just like in the other episodes, but I make sure that it's simplistic and easy enough to read. In normals, you'll notice my distance snap doesn't go off, but maybe once or twice. And that's because I feel that as you go through the difficulties, say we were working at easy first and our way up to Insane, distance snap is something that new players are going to recognize and understand more than just placing the notes everywhere. They'll have a feeling that, hey, this is this far from that, and I hit it at a 1/2, now I'm hitting it at a 1/4 and it's the same. That'll confuse too many people. So, keeping your normals heavy with distance snap is okay. And that's not to say that distance snap cannot be turned off. Like for patterns like that, for example, that crisscross with the sliders there, those probably aren't distance snapped 100% perfectly, but that's okay, as the circles are pretty much not too far from the original distance snap position, and they'll still play just about the same way they would if you weren't using the distance snap, or if you were using it, I'm sorry. Alright, and as we go further through here, you'll see there's not as much copy paste in this difficulty as my other ones, but the reason for that being is that the rhythm itself is kind of copy pasted pretty heavy. When copy pasting patterns and the same rhythm, that can get a little bit too repetitive, and then you'll have people going, well, this isn't fun, I don't want to play it anymore. Alright, so I'm going through here, I'm adding in combos and whatnot. Everything so far looks good, and just remember to look over it, check over it, and make sure to adjust it. The only time where breaking distance snap is okay is when it's either a new combo, and remember, because this is a normal, you don't want to try to make the jump too ridiculous. Yes, you can break distance snap when adding to a new combo, but it really shouldn't be done unless it's in like a decent taste. Yeah, and I decided there that a spinner would be better than a long slider, so I went ahead and deleted the notes prior. Like, just because you set up your base first doesn't mean you can't make changes to it later. It's not set in stone by any means. You can make all kinds of different edits. I also want to point out that none of these are actually, I do want to point out, none of these maps have actually been modded. So for the viewers watching and seeing these, there probably are some issues because nobody's perfect. So definitely, if you see issues and you want to help the map out, feel free to give it a mod. There's no pressure towards giving it a mod or not. It doesn't really matter either which way. This is mostly for demonstration purposes anyways. And some people might notice that the beat snap divisor is set at 1/2. That's because in a normal, I will not use a blue tick. I feel that that's a little bit offsetting for newer players because they're looking for a simplistic rhythm and not something that's complex. So as you see, I'm staying away from anything that might be deemed as too complex. And I apologize, I do have a little bit of a hiccup there. All right. So now we're about 50% through the map here, and we're going to start moving stuff through. I think the only clear copy paste I use in this is at the very end, if I'm not mistaken. And that's because the very end does a repeating music section that's the exact same. It's literally just the same little chorus repeated. And for a normal, to have something like that copy pasted is actually pretty intuitive for the player because, like I said, this is a normal difficulty. It's not hard, it's not insane. There's not going to be players that are ready for all the crazy stuff, of course, unless they're just playing it, with mods and whatnot. But most people that play normals are still pretty new to the game and they're still trying to figure out how stuff works. Now, as for star rating for this, I do believe it came out to like almost 3 stars. And if you remember, my hard was around 3.5. So I ended up lowering the settings on this a little bit to get it to like 2.5, almost 3. That way, the spread kind of mulls over. Because I'm thinking the easy's probably only going to be maybe 1 and 1.5 stars. And the easies, they'll use a lot of symmetric patterns and really large and long sliders, and that's just to make it a little bit easier. Of course, the OD and all the other settings that you'll need to adjust will be adjusted as well, but that way you can make a proper spread. And so far with this whole time-lapse series and working on this map, I do know the artist that worked on the song, Miqz, is quite happy with the end result, but of course this is still a work in progress by all means, so I wouldn't say to judge it now as it is, but rather wait for the modding team to come through and take a look at it and see what they think. And I'm just adjusting this pattern here. Get those set up. And I think we're getting really close to the end here. And because those are so far out, you can space them out a little bit further. Got a nice 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I let that play through a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this here. Alright, and I'm going to... This is where I start to copy paste a little bit. And it's not just because it's the end and I was like, oh man, I need to get this out. If you hear it in the song, this last part of the song is very repetitive. It just repeats the last section over and over again. And when we actually get to listen to the song itself with no edits here in a little bit, you'll be able to check that out more fully. So real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and adjust those. Yeah, I do believe this is this is a pattern I copy pasted. So I'm going to go ahead and get this here and add that there. nice little slider pattern there. As going heavy with the sliders in a normal isn't really that big of a deal. As I said, sliders are a little bit easier to play as you don't have to focus so much on hitting it properly on time at the beginning. It still has a timing window, don't get me wrong. You could still get a low score on it. It's just a lot easier than a hit circle. Even more so in a normal with the overall difficulty and the other settings lowered so much to where it's easier to play. Of course, this isn't always the case. I know some people will say, well, I don't believe that it is easier because the things with the approach rate and everything, a lot of people have problems with slower approach rates, but it just goes with how long have you been playing them. And there we go, just a simple vertical flip there, and it actually works really good. Alright, so let's check out this map in its entirety. Alright, and that was Sound of My Dreams, the time-lapse normal. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, you can check out the map for yourself at the link below. And I just want to thank everybody that's been keeping an eye on this series, and remember, rhythm is only a click away, and we'll see you real soon.